One. Welcome, Jill, to the Root of Our Health. Thank you so much for being here today. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
So I'm just going to go and dig right in, right? I'm just going to jump in here and then, just let it all in there, right? Exactly. So I have your book. I just got your book. I don't know if everybody could see that. Rescuing Jill, How MDMA and with a Dash of Mushrooms Healed My Childhood Trauma-Induced PTSD. So let's just, get into it.
Sure.
Can you let my audience know, your backstory and how you became who you are today and why you wrote this book? So I know it's a loaded question, but if we can, just get to the backstory, I think that would be a great start.
Super quick.
Yeah.
So I think everyone knows I'm sitting here today chatting about the book because I didn't have a great childhood. My childhood was tinged with my mother attempting suicide multiple times, depressed her whole life. My father was a domestic abuser. I went back and forth between them, and I suffered a good bit of trauma, not knowing it. I grew up estranged from my father when I was an adult, I should say, estranged from my father, and just kind of thought of my childhood as just kind of rotten and not great, because at the end of the day, I was fed, I was clothed, I made it through high school. I knew a whole lot of other people who did not have even that level of care. So I just knew I didn't have a great childhood, but nothing other than that. And then I had a lovely 20-ish year relationship with Carl, and life was good. I had a career, I had a nice safe home, and I was a high anxiety kind of person. I was hyper productive at work, but I just kind of thought that was me. Well, Carl passed away, and about 18 months after he passed away, I got a work email that spiraled me into a panic attack that would not go away. I can't even explain just the constant fight or flight in my body. My stomach was upset, my shoulders were tight, my head was freaking out. My mind said, this work email, this requirement, this is nothing. But my body was just flipping out. And I got very, very depressed because I just couldn't calm down. I just felt like there was constantly something after me. I went back to my therapist who had helped me with my grief work, and she's fantastic. And she diagnosed me unwillingly with PTSD from childhood trauma, because she explained to me that trauma is actually housed in the body, and I did not know that. There's an excellent book called The Body Keeps the Score. She had me read that book because I was arguing with her. I'm like, I'm a productive citizen. What are you talking about? And the diagnosis was true. And after several months of talk therapy not helping the PTSD response, I could not calm down. She had me go to maps.org, maps.org. They are running the clinical trials on the psychedelic MDMA for PTSD. It's actually been labeled as a breakthrough therapy with the FDA. I read about the research. She knew how we could get this done in my part of the country. And I said, okay, I trusted her. I trusted my guide. And that started a year-long healing journey with 3 psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy sessions. And the therapy was so perspective shifting and healing that I thought it was really important to put my voice out to share with people that psychedelics are not what we were fed. I'm 52, that they are not the, this is your brain on drugs kind of commercial. That's always what I thought, that these compounds can be used for good and for healing. And I wanted my voice to come out. And so there you go. That's why we're sitting chatting.
Wow. Beautiful. How long ago was this? How long ago did you start or, were diagnosed, and take us through that timeline?
Carl passed when I was 47. I was diagnosed at 49.
Okay.
Again, argued, kicking and screaming.
Right.
So I think there's a little bit of education in our country about what trauma actually is. I think that would be helpful for folks. And then September, my first, look at me trying to remember dates. I'm terrible with dates. I was diagnosed probably in the spring and then introduced to the therapy, talk therapy through figuring out what my intentions were, had my first therapeutic journey in September, and my last therapeutic journey where I was no longer classified as having PTSD in June. So from September to June.
Okay.
I just round up and say a year, because I actually did have I had a fourth therapeutic journey back again in September, but technically I wasn't clinical PTSD at that point. There was just it was like just cleaning up.
I was just going to say the cleanup kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you're done, are you like fully done, or are there certain, like, you have to go back every so often? How does that work? Like, is it just like, okay, you're done, there's no PTSD, so we're cutting you off? Or is there, like, again, a cleanup, or is there some sort of just making sure that, like, kind of remission, so to speak?
Yeah, I think actually you're the first person to ask that question. That's a great question. So my therapist lets me pick up talk therapy at any point. And I have recently picked up talk therapy because I've noticed that while I no longer have the fight or flight, which is awesome, I do still have kind of a high level of anxiety. And I would like to work through that. So we've been doing, again, the same cycle of talk therapy. Where do I think it's coming from? What's happening to my body when I'm feeling some of those anxiety issues? And then we will probably schedule another journey at some point.
Yeah.
So I think it's my personal opinion, I'm not a doctor.
Right.
My personal opinion is it probably varies from person to person, because I mean, that'll be a full year in between journey, probably longer. And that's just how long sometimes, like, the integration period after a journey can take. It's just up to your subconscious to figure out what you need.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was always, like, interested in figuring out, is it just like a clean break, or, again, and you're right, it is person to person. It depends on how deep the trauma, how, does it come back, or, is it, again, we're all different human beings, made up, differently. So it is different person to person. So
Definitely. I think that's what the research is going to find, that
yeah,
different people need a little bit different, and plus different diagnoses. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
No. So then I just want to kind of dig in a little bit more about the psychedelics. So if you could explain the MDMA and the psilocybin, and how the psychedelic-assisted therapy works. So if you can do that, that'd be awesome.
Yep. So for folks who want to dive in a little bit deeper, when you go to maps.org, maps.org, they have all of the research that they're doing, and they have a couple of graphics and some pictures that will illustrate exactly what I'm going to say. So MDMA is commonly known by the fun title of ecstasy. I had medical grade MDMA. I knew there was nothing in it. And MDMA was synthesized in the early 1900s. It's not a natural chemical. And for people like me with PTSD, what it did was it calmed my body down. Like, when you're kind of stressed and you realize that your shoulders are by your ears, MDMA calmed me down, and in calming me down allowed me to think about and remember my childhood without all of the trauma that my body was signaling. And so the therapeutic journey would last anywhere from 5 to 8 hours. So it is a big time commitment. And my guides, this was not traditional talk therapy. Sometimes I had a face mask on, an eye mask on. I'm not a headphones person, but I've seen other people having headphones on with music. There was music in the background, but I'm a chatty person. Mm-hmm. So I tended to chat with my guides a good portion. They had to really force me to go inward.
Okay.
And here's the thing that I found fascinating. For me, the MDMA, I didn't have any like perspective shifts or anything during the actual journey. It felt like the MDMA kind of coded some of my memories. so that the 2, 3, or 4 months after the journey, you know, like when you're in the shower and you just start thinking about things, you're taking a walk and you just start thinking about things, I would start to think of my childhood. And without my body, somehow the MDMA made it so that those particular memories, my body didn't have a reaction. And I was able to look at them from a completely different perspective. And the long story of that is that from a childhood perspective, we all think that everything is our fault because we don't understand anything else. Looking at my childhood memories from this adult perspective without these feelings was almost like one of your friends looking at your childhood memories and saying, of course it wasn't your fault. Your parents did XYZ.
Right.
But that integration and remembering and rethinking those memories and shifting my perspective, that's where the healing happened. And after 2 or 3 months, when my body was starting to tighten up again, or I'd get some awful feelings, that's when my body was saying, okay, we need another journey. Let's get another set of intentions. So that captures the MDMA. And then we can talk a little bit about the psilocybin for the third journey, if you'd like.
Yeah. But just, yeah, we'll go right into that. I just kind of want to make a statement of what I'm hearing. So it sounds like a lot of times, you know, you bring in the body, right? And I do a lot of healing in terms of coaching through stress, right? The chronic stress. So I get, and, you know, been through it. It's up here. We clench, you know, our jaws clench. Exactly. We hardly breathe, you know, our breathing is shallow. So it almost seems as if, and I'm going to bring in the body and the mind piece together. So when we do that, we shut down our brain. So what ends up happening is it's not, so anything that's subconscious cannot get to the front. So it's being pushed down and pushed down and pushed down. And you can like visually, when you do that with your, you know, your body, it's almost as if you're doing that and then it's pushing it down even further. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like with this MDMA, it kind of opens, it relaxed you. And when you were saying, you know, walking out in the, you know, in the forest, you're being exactly, and you're being relaxed, and what ends up happening is whatever is subconscious down here kind of comes up to here into your conscious. So when we start letting go, and I feel, and it sounds like the MDMA just basically kind of allows it and allows that subconscious to come to the forefront. What was the experience for you? Meaning, okay, two questions that kind of came to mind. When you went into this, were there any expectations? Because you never did this before. Was there any expectations, or you were just like, all right, well, I need to do something and this is what it is? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And I was a miserable failure on my first journey because my little inner 5-year-old didn't trust adults.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. and that's the other question that I was going to ask is a lot of times, you know, we're afraid to face our fears. So we have the fear to face the fear, right? So was there any, and you kind of alluded to it just now, that you were just like, I'm still holding this back because I don't want to know. Like, I know it's there, but I don't want to know this right now. So was it you said the first no. So was it the second and third time you kind of actually became a little bit, you know, more open and things were starting to get, when was that? Was the second, third, or fourth?
Oh my gosh. Phenomenal question. Because here's the thing, when I started to heal, I actually was afraid of healing because I had lived my whole life a certain way. What was my life going to be like if I suddenly wasn't hyper productive because I'm so scared? Was I going to still be able to hold the job?
Right.
Like it gets that basic. There is actually a fear around healing because who are you going to be? So with that said, so I put in quotes that I was a miserable failure during my first journey because I snapped out of it after 5 hours. And my guide said that it was like I was having an inner party, and I let them, I invited them, I let them to the door, but I wouldn't let them in. It was kind of cool. And I was very upset. I was very, very upset after that first journey. I thought, oh, because I didn't know what to expect. And I thought maybe I'm supposed to feel different. Well, I was, my boyfriend at the time picked me up, dropped me off and picked me up. And in the car ride home, I started to have an inner conversation kind of with myself. I had never really talked to myself before about feeling like such an inconvenience that he had to drive all of 25 minutes to pick me up. Like, come on, right? But I had this like, oh, I'm such an inconvenience. And my inner voice said, really? This is like nothing. He didn't even have to take time off of work to do this. Are you really an inconvenience? And it ultimately came back to my childhood being shunted around. I went to like 13 different schools before I graduated from high school. And I had this instilled sense of I was an inconvenience to my parents. So I found out immediately that this therapy was doing something. And then those 4-ish months, 3 to 4-ish months, the integration was just like that. I would start to have conversations. So the second journey, I was like ready to go. I was like, I want to do more of this.
Yeah.
And then the third journey, which was pivotal, we had gotten all the way down to when, and I say down in terms of age, when I was 5. And that's when my mother attempted suicide with a shotgun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she shot herself. She survived, but it was horrific. And for her, it was absolutely horrific.
Was this in front of you or no?
No, but my father and I came home and we both saw her in the bathroom.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I had known something bad had happened.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway,
yeah.
I had this really weird, you talk about the subconscious trying to talk to us. I'd had this really weird dream of a 5-year-old Jill, and a lot of our people in our demographic will get this reference, with a Pac-Man head.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I had a Pac-Man head, like full of teeth. I was this little girl with this Pac-Man head. And I was talking to my therapist and I'm like, I had the weirdest dream.
Oh, goodness.
And we're talking about it. But the basic, and I talk about it in depth in the book, because here was the pivotal thing. I couldn't get that little girl out of her childhood home. She had this monster head to protect herself when she was in this childhood home. And the third journey during MDMA, my body was relaxed. I said to my guides, there's a little Jill upstairs trapped in her bedroom and she can't get out.
Yeah.
And we had talked about the possibility of using psilocybin. And I had basically trusted my doctors at that point. I consider them doctors, the therapist and my other doctor. I was like, whatever we need to do. And literally in the transcript, and I have it in the book, the transcript is like, that little girl's there. I don't know how I'm going to get her out. And my guide's like, yeah, you're not going to be able to. We need some psilocybin. We need some mushrooms.
Right.
And within an hour of taking the psilocybin with the intention of getting that little girl out of that house, in my mind, and I had an eye mask on at the time, my childhood home literally burst open like a blooming onion. It like burst open.
Yeah.
And I found myself in a garden. And right then and there, I would say the majority of my PTSD symptoms went away.
Wow. So it was literally with the MDMA, it was literally like at the top, like cuffs, and then the psilocybin kind of basically took it over. Yep. And wow.
I theorize, because I'm not a neuroscience science. I theorized it allowed me to visualize the freeing of that little girl. That's my theory.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. So it's amazing that, you had guides and you had, doctors or therapists that knew, that were so, I don't want to say smart, but that knew what to do to get you to that next point. So instead of keep doing the MDMA and it's not working, and then let's try this, it was just as if it was like all like, all right, well, we know that X, Y, and Z, MDMA is going to get you to this point. All
Right.
right, well, we're seeing that you're kind of stuck, so let's give you that psilocybin, and there you go. And that's just amazing that there are trusted doctors like that and therapists to be like, it's not just prescribing stuff, it's just more or less like, let's get you into a better mindset and get you out of this,
Yeah.
the
Safe way.
state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. You see, there's a lot of Reddit groups and there's a lot of Facebook groups where people who are really hurting with what I call mental injuries. I don't like this mental
Illness.
I
Yeah.
like mental. This was an injury, in my opinion, from the trauma. And I see them constantly going back to the medicine. And in reality, the medicine was just one component. If I didn't have my guides there walking me through this,
Yeah.
me personally, I never would have been able to do this on my own.
Yeah. Which is, and I think that's the smart way to do it is with guides, because, you could be sitting in home doing this, and then all of a sudden something happens, and then what? Like, you're in a shock. Then it's either going to be like nobody's there to guide you through it, get you, make you feel safe. And then what ends up happening is, if you're doing it by yourself, all of a sudden it's probably going to go back into into its shell, right? It's going to, because you're so shocked, it's like, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's going to be in the opposite effect of what you want out of it. So that's why I think a lot of times, that's why it's saying psychedelic assisted therapy.
Yep.
Because
careful with that language.
Assisted, because, and then it's not just anybody, right? You can't just, have somebody just sit there, walk you through it. Excuse me. You have to have professionals like therapists, like people that you trust.
Yes.
And yes, so that is definitely very important, especially for getting over, getting through PTSD and whatnot.
Right. And that's what's happening. So maps.org is working with the FDA because MDMA for PTSD is a breakthrough therapy.
Yeah.
They're at the phase 3 trials right now. They should end in the fall. And then theoretically, if everything is going according to plan in 2023, MAPS is going to go to the FDA to have this therapy approved.
Okay.
There are a number of programs. I don't know what they are, but I know there are a number of programs across the country that are actively working to skill up therapists. And I think once the therapy is approved, we're going to see a huge number of programs for therapists to get certified. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. So I just caution people to really vet for yourself who you're going to work with if you're going to be working with this before it's legalized by the FDA and or immediately right after, because it takes time for people to get skilled up and trained.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So then I guess the question, according to the FDA being all of this being approved, like, do you have a status of when this is going to be approved as legal? Is there anything that that you've noticed or that is going to be coming down the pike at all?
Yeah, so my information is just because I attended South by Southwest last year, and they had 2 days of psychedelic content. There's a lot of investors in the space. Everyone's trying to figure out, is there a specific compound in psilocybin, or can we modify MDMA to make it more, I'm going to make up a word, insuranceable?
Okay. Yeah.
Because 5 to 8 hours is a long time.
Yeah.
And what will insurance cover and things of that sort. So there's a lot going on in the space. So MAPS showed up, and that's the timeline I just said is exactly what they said, anticipating 2023.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. Well, that's good to know, because, again, we need this to be legalized, and then, obviously the red tape and all of the, the back end needs to be fleshed out and figured out before we can get there. But it's, very good. So for people who are interested in, this psychedelic assisted therapy, So do they have to be diagnosed with like a PTSD, or what do they have to, how can they get into the psychedelic assisted therapy? Like, do they have to be diagnosed? Or yeah, how does that work?
So here's what I tell people right now. MAPS.org is accepting people into clinical trials. I think they closed the MDMA for PTSD just because they're in phase 3 and they're going to finish up in the fall, but I could be wrong. I would definitely go to their website, see what clinical trials are being offered. And at that point, yes, you do need to have a diagnosis of some sort. I can't tell you exactly what their clinical trials are.
Right.
We also check Johns Hopkins has a psychedelic center. They have the breakthrough therapy designation for psilocybin for depression.
Okay.
So if folks are looking, and if folks have a history of depression or a diagnosis of depression, I would look over there too and see what their clinical trials are. I did not hear from them. We don't exactly know what their timelines are, but those are 2 organizations that the FDA is working with. So I feel like they're going to have the most valid information. And I would also just from my own experience, I would caution people, because here's what I get. When people read the book, they're like, oh, well, Jill, would it work for this? Would it work for that?
Yeah.
We really need to research more. I can't tell you what it would work for and what it wouldn't. And I would absolutely, if you have any sort of history in your family of schizophrenia, I would totally stay away from psychedelics.
Yeah.
Like, don't dive in on your own, is really my best advice. So I just would hate for somebody to read my book and say, oh, well, I'm going to try it for XYZ when it's not my diagnosis.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, because I know that there's a lot of people who would do that. So your book is just basically your story and how this form and this approach can definitely help. But again, it's like how I do it, more education. It's more like I'm using my story to help you understand there's a new approach, but you're going to have to kind of take it from there. Like, you're going to have to take, talk with professionals or talk with your, doctors or whomever, and just make sure that it is set up right for you. Because we're going back to that individual person again. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I wrote it chronologically so people can get, when I went into the therapy, I could not find any real patient journey. So hence I didn't know what to expect. So that's really what I gave. You get all the Jill history. Well, you get a lot of Jill history, nitty gritty childhood story stuff. But in doing that, you get to see the perspective. And it was the only way I could think of actually showing the therapy and what it does. So it's not a how-to, right? It's more of a, oh, this is how it can work.
Got it. I can't wait to dig in. So with that being said, actually, can you tell my audience where to pick up this book and actually where they could reach out to you if they have any questions, if you would like?
Absolutely. JillSitnick.com. Feel free. I've got a little form if anybody wants to chat, talk. A lot of times I'll get people asking questions for family members and things of that sort. But you did a great job. Usually whatever I share with them is pretty much what I shared with you.
Okay.
And the book is on Amazon. And I just finished the Audible version. You get to listen to me.
Nice. Nice. How was it doing that? Did you have, I'm sure, because isn't it like bringing it up again? It's kind of like, I would think it would be.
No, that part wasn't awful. I was sitting in my closet because, believe it or not, as a sound studio, a closet.
Exactly. A lot of podcasters do that. Like they do podcasting or, recordings in the closet because you have, so I know, I could just visualize that.
Sitting on the floor of my closet recording. So yeah, I'll never do. If I ever write again, someone else is going to be recording it.
No, but I'm glad that you did it. I think it'll probably be a little bit more, organic. I think because you are reading it instead of somebody else reading it in your words. So, so yeah, can't wait to again read this. I'm a visual person. But anybody who, wants to listen, it's out there. Is it already out? The audio? Okay.
I wanted to get it out in before before the therapy is approved because I didn't want clickbait media to start shifting the idea around psychedelics. I wanted to have a strong, solid story of healing out there. So that's why I published so early.
Got it. Perfect. And I have one last question.
Mhm.
So can you leave us with any like a favorite quote or any words of inspiration? Okay. What does that say? I'm excited.
If the path you are on is clear, you're probably on someone else's.
Love it.
And it's attributed to a bunch of people. I have it attributed to Jung. But with the healing stuff, like a lot of the PTSD, a lot of that behavior was what I should do,
Yeah,
versus authentically who I was. And I'm going to tell you right now, when after I healed, about 6 months after I healed, I quit my job and pivoted.
nice.
Yeah.
It was like as if it opened up again, not only the healing part, but it just kind of opened up a whole new Jill.
And no longer what I should be.
Should. Got to get rid of those shoulds.
Got to get rid of the shoulds. Thank you. That's a wonderful question. Thank you. Really.
Yeah, no, I'm always intrigued, and this didn't disappoint. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Jill, I just want to thank you once again for being on here. You shared a lot. It is definitely something that I've been interested in learning more, and hoping that and knowing that my audience is also craving an understanding for alternative to, get through depression, PTSD, all of that. So I, again, thank you for being on here and sharing your story and how you overcame it. So thank you
so much. This was delightful. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, until next time.
Take care.